treason. And Khachaturian's ballet, Gaineb, has been one of the most popular ballet scores in history since its premiere in the 1940s. Also on the way, two composers tell the story of Salome and the character of Omphal.
Good evening and welcome to the November 16th, 2022 meeting of the Edina Planning Commission. The city is committed to continuing to receive and hear your input on matters. We've been collecting public input through voicemail and our engagement website, bettertogetheredina.org. It's important that you know all comments that have been submitted have been received and read prior to the start of this meeting. You do not need to submit the same feedback in another way. All feedback is considered equally, regardless of the way in which it was submitted. Tonight, there are two public hearings. Individuals who want to provide testimony remotely for the public hearings can call 786-496-5601 and enter conference pin 4691667#. Press star 1 on your telephone keypad when you'd like to get into the queue to speak. An operator will introduce you when it's your turn, and then just please state your full name and address before speaking. Everyone will be allowed up to 3 minutes to speak. Staff member Liz Olson will let anyone who calls in know if they go over 3 minutes. And remember, you do not need to call in or comment live tonight if you've already provided feedback. And also, please do not repeat any information already presented. Provide testimony if you have new comments or information to bring forward. And so with that, I will go ahead and call us to order, and we'll do our roll call.
Commissioner Padilla.
Here.
Commissioner Miranda.
Here.
Commissioner Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Elkire.
Here.
Commissioner Hu.
Here.
Commissioner Strauss.
Here.
Commissioner Bennett.
Here.
Commissioner Olson.
Here.
Chair Agnew.
Present. Thank you. Next is the approval of our meeting agenda. I will entertain a motion to approve that.
Also move.
Second.
All right. All those in favor of approving our meeting agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Our agenda has been approved. Next up is approval of minutes from our October 25th meeting. Motion for that.
Move to approve the minutes. Second.
All right. Any further changes? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. Our minutes from October 25th have been approved. Next, I would like to open up our community comment. So we will hear from residents in person who would like to speak about something not on tonight's agenda or scheduled for a future public hearing. Again, similar to public testimony, you may speak for up to 3 minutes. After giving your full name and address, the green light on your podium will turn on. When you have 30 seconds remaining, the yellow light will turn on. And when you're out of time, the red light will turn on. So is anyone here to provide community comment tonight? Seeing none, we will continue on to our public hearings. So first up, we have our lot width variances being presented by Assistant Planner Ocker.
Thank you, chairs, members of the Planning Commission. The requests are lot width variances for two separate properties, 3601 and 3517 West 55th Street. The subject property is located, or properties, is located south of West 55th Street. It consists of two 60-foot wide lots that are backing up to Minnehaha Creek. Sustainable 9 Design Build is requesting the 2 variances. They are the applicants. They are requesting 15-foot lot width variance for a pair of vacant lots that are 60-foot wide, that are just south of 55th Street and backing up to the creek. A previous homeowner separated the lots and obtained individual addresses and PID numbers for Lot 1 at 3601, which is 15,260 square feet in area, and then Lot 4, which is 3517 West 55th Street, which is 14,812 square feet in area. The lots are owned individually with separate owners. The previous home has been removed on the site, so there are 2 vacant lots. Both of them are poised for new home construction. Conforming home plans for each lot are proposed and are permit ready. In fact, we do have a permit application in for the property at 3517. The 2 lots conform to the minimum R1 lot size requirements with the exception of lot width. So this is a conformance table. They meet all of the zoning minimum ordinance requirements with the exception of that lot width. So the ask tonight is for a 15-foot lot width variance for Lot 1, 3601 West 55th Street, and separately a variance for a 15-foot lot width variance for Lot 4 at 3517 West 55th Street. So what I'm going to show you is that there are 2 homes that are planned for each lot. This one is at 3517. It conforms to all of the ordinance requirements. There's a compliance table indicating as such. This is the lot that, or the property that is in currently for permit and has been sold to a couple to build their home. Here is a front elevation. Again, it meets all of the ordinance requirements. The house itself is not in question at all. It's just a matter of addressing the fact that the width of the lot currently doesn't meet our current zoning ordinance. And then at 3601, there is a spec home that is planned for the property, and that also meets all of the ordinance requirements. This is the front elevation showing that house. Again, there's no question this evening regarding the homes that are proposed for the lots. And then the 2 homes that are in context with the neighboring properties. And then back to the question at hand, which is the 60-foot lot widths that do not meet our current code, which is 75 feet. So the primary issue is, will the proposal relieve practical difficulties that prevent a reasonable use from complying with the ordinance requirements? The practical difficulty is caused by the current ordinance requiring a 75-foot lot width that was amended after the underlying plat was originally established with the 60-foot wide lots. You can see along the block that most of the lots, if not all of them, are 60 feet in width. Are there circumstances that are unique to the property, not common to similarly zoned properties? The circumstances unique to this property are the size and shape of the lots that were not created by the applicant. Both lots are individually addressed. They have separate PID numbers and are owned by different parties. Variances are only needed to resolve the lot width question for both lots, which are an existing condition that was not self-created or self-imposed by the property owner. Will the variance alter the essential character of the neighborhood? No, the proposed improvements requested by the variances would not alter the essential character of the neighborhood. The 2 compliant single-family homes will be constructed on the lots and will have similar widths, than the other home or the other lots along the block. Staff does recommend the Planning Commission approve the lot width variances based on the following findings. Lot width were consistently platted at 60-foot wide lots prior to the current requirement of 75 feet. The lots exceed the lot depth and area requirements and are similar to other lots within the vicinity. The practical difficulty is caused by the current ordinance minimums with the 60-foot wide lots originally platted prior to that. The 60-foot wide lots are reasonable in context with neighboring property. Each lot is individually owned, again, with separate PID numbers for each lot. And the proposed development is reasonable for each lot. House plans proposed for each lot require no additional variances and will not alter the essential character of the neighborhood. Staff recommends individual approval of the following lot with variances, so it would have to, there would have to be two separate motions, one for each property. For approval, subject to the following conditions, subject to the survey submitted for both properties, date stamped October 14th, 2022, in compliance with the engineering memos. They have reviewed the plans as well. In compliance with the newly adopted tree ordinance, which will require replacement trees planted on the site. That ordinance will not be put in place until January 1st, but given the fact that there are variances required, staff has been recommending that that ordinance be part of the conditions of variance approval. And with that, I will stop and answer any questions you may have.
Thank you so much. Can you tell me, like, was this something that was missed, or how did we get to the point where there's like individual ownership? It was already divided, it's treated as two separate properties, and they just can't build yet?
It came through as part of the 30, or it came to be aware by staff when the 3517 West 55th Street came in for building permit application, and it doesn't meet our current minimum standard of 75 feet. So they are waiting, or they've applied for a variance in order to address that one particular zoning requirement for the lot.
But the lot already exists, right?
Correct.
Okay.
It's a 60-foot wide lot as opposed to a 75-foot minimum lot.
Okay. Please, Commissioner Strauss.
Yes, Planner Ocker, I don't know if you need to go back to that plat view showing the lots. Every single, I mean, that entire area was platted with 60-foot wide lots. How did we end up with a zoning requirement of 75 feet when the entire area, I mean, I could see maybe some of each, but I'm just started wondering, why did they lay a 75-foot requirement for lot width over platted land that everything there, I mean, so every house there is not in compliance with the current zoning, right?
When this area was platted, the standards were different. The 75-foot width minimum came about when Western Edina was developing. So when these lots were platted, they were compliant with the zoning at that time. So they're non-conforming now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at all these 50-foot wide lots, and I mean,
Right.
so,
Similar to the country club, those are all 50-foot wide lots.
okay.
Not uncommon for the east side of Edina.
But this entire neighborhood was probably built with that 60-foot wide
That's
lot as the typical.
That's correct.
And then, obviously,
Previously,
the depth of the lot varies a lot,
Yep.
but
Previously, there was one home built over that lot line, so it's not sure how that permit was issued years and years and years ago, but it sat on top of an existing lot line. Typically, those property owners, when they do that, they combine the lots.
And then there's just one other thing. I think in that one view, it looked like the portion of the lot adjacent to the creek had a shading. Is that like government? Yeah. What does that mean?
Actually, I don't think that's just showing that there's a creek there. It does not line up with any sort of flood zone or setback to the creek. I'm not exactly sure why that is shaded the way it is, because there is quite a bit of depth there, and they have a lot of opportunity before they hit both of the setbacks as well as the floodplain.
Yeah, and that it doesn't come into play, but I was just wondering if that's considered
No,
unbuildable
No.
or whatever. But okay, thank you.
Commissioner Alkire?
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to the previous line of questioning that Commissioner Strauss had. So does that mean that every 60-foot lot as it's redeveloped in Edina is going to need a variance no matter what?
No. The difference here is there was one home across the lot, and once that home was removed, we had 2 vacant parcels. So in order to build on them, if there was one home on each parcel, they could tear down and rebuild as non-conforming lots.
Without a variance?
Without a variance, correct. So anyone else in this neighborhood, if they wanted to tear down, rebuild, they would just have to meet setback requirements. So this one being a little different in that it was one single-family home located on 2 lots.
Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Miranda?
Yeah, just to continue that a little bit. So so to be clear, so the minimum lot size is citywide, right? So it just evolved over time with the size of lots as houses got bigger and property got bigger in the 70s and whatever. So that's citywide. It changed over time. My neighborhood's 50 foot wide. And then, so this wasn't a single property that was split a year ago or 2 years ago or something. This was always 2 lots. Is that what you're saying? Okay.
That's correct, our understanding, yes.
Okay. So now, but we had something recently where, I don't know if it was a lot split or something, where somebody wanted to do something and then they would have to come back when they actually built the building. Can you get a lot split and then still not be able to build something on it? Do you still need a variance at that point? If it were one property? I mean, this is theoretical, I guess, but I guess. Trying to remember what that was.
Yeah, I'm not, I
Okay.
can't think of what project that might have been.
Okay, I don't know if it was housing or it could have been a commercial building, I don't know. Something happened recently. All right, that's it, thank you.
All right. Seeing no further questions, I know we have the applicant in person to answer any questions as well. I don't think that there was a presentation or anything included, right? Okay. Do we have any questions then for the applicant before we go to our public hearing? All right, wonderful. So with that, we will open up our public hearing. So first, I will hear from those who are in person, and then if you would like to provide testimony remotely, I would recommend you call in now. And again, that phone number was 786-496-5601, and enter conference pin 6491667#. And for those in person or dialing in, everyone will be allowed up to 3 minutes to speak. Please start with your full name and address, and you will either be notified via the lights on the podium or by staff member Liz Olson when you've gone over 3 minutes. So I will start with anyone in person to provide public testimony for this. All right, seeing none, I will look to see if anyone has called in yet.
No one has called in yet, but I would recommend waiting 1 minute just to make sure that everyone has dialed in if they would like to.
Thank you. My watch says a minute. Has anyone else dialed in?
There are no other callers.
All right. Can I have a motion to close the public hearing then, please?
Move to close public hearing?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the public hearing has been closed. So with that, I will open it up to comments from anyone on the commission. Commissioner Smith?
Yes. I guess this is more of a question, maybe for Director Teague. So with the tree ordinance, I know the tree ordinance says that any tree removed needs to be replaced. If there's a tree on property 1 right now, but then you split it into 2 properties, you have to replace it with 2 trees, a tree on property 1 and property 2? Or is it just property 1 would be responsible for that tree, the side who has it currently?
Yeah, if a tree is removed on property 1, it would have to be replaced on property 1. And there's some other options in there too, but if a tree is removed on the other, it would have to go back on to the same lot that it was removed from. That would be reviewed at the time of the individual building permits that come in for each lot.
All right, any other comments, discussion? I mean, I guess I'll just add that this one feels pretty cut and dry. I mean, it's already 2 lots. I think it's interesting that it even had to be brought to us in a public hearing. But we go through the process, and I will be voting to approve this one. So, no further comments. I would take a motion. Well, there's 2, so we have to do it in 2 separate motions for whoever was going to go ahead and give me that motion.
I'll make a motion for 3517 West 55th Street to approve the variance based on the staff recommendations.
Second.
All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so the first motion for 3517 55th Street West has been approved. Can I have a second motion?
Make a motion to approve the lot width variance at 3601 55th Street West based on the findings and conditions listed in the staff report.
Second.
All right, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the second one has been approved as well. Thank you for coming in, going through the process. All right, next up, we have a 9.55 foot front yard setback and a 9.6 foot first floor height variance request for 4905 Sunny Slope Road. And Assistant Planner Acker will be presenting this one as well.
Thank you. So it is a first floor height variance request and a front yard setback variance request for a home that is currently located fronting 4920 Sunny Slope East. What they're planning on doing, and you can see here, it is a through lot. The house fronts Sunny Slope East with the back lot line along Hilltop. They're hoping to tear down and rebuild and reorient the house so that the front of the house is now fronting along Hilltop Lane and the backyard is along East Sunny Slope. So this is the existing house. Again, it's oriented towards Sunny Slope. The house was built in 1941. It is a 2-story home with a 3-car garage. You can see that here. There is quite a difference in elevation from front to back, and once it's switched over, you will have the front of the house up the hill with this now being the rear yard. So this is the new home that's proposed for the property. There are 2 variances that are needed or being requested for the design that they've come up with. The variances that are needed or requested are the 9.6 foot, first floor height variance. The ordinance allows you to tear down and rebuild a home. The first floor can't be any higher than 1 foot above the existing first floor. For them to orient the house up the hill towards Hilltop, obviously that first floor is going to increase or it be more elevated than the existing home. So that is the reason why they're asking for a variance from that requirement. The other ordinance that they are asking for forgiveness from is the front yard setback ordinance, which is the requirement that you match the average front yard setback of the homes that are fronting Hilltop currently on either side of the property. And that's a 9.55-foot front yard setback variance because the adjacent neighbors have an average of 41.15 feet for front yard setback, and they would like to be at 34.6 feet. So this is a view from Hilltop of the properties that are nearby and surrounding. And a little more detail on the survey of the home that's being proposed. They do have a tree removal, tree replacement plan. Staff does recommend that any approval also subject the house to the, or the property to the amended ordinance that's going to be taken into effect in January for tree replacement. So regarding the compliance table, the two areas that they're requesting variances from are from the west side front or new front yard, which would be 34.6 feet. With the required standard is at 44.15 feet. The first floor elevation, what it could be elevated up to, is at 926.4. They're hoping to get up to 936. So here are some of the floor plans. This would be the basement floor plan and the main floor plan. It is a walkout rambler. It's not a two-story home. So we have the front elevation and the west elevation or left elevation. And then the east elevation, this is facing Sunny Slope. And then the right elevation, and some renderings of what they're proposing. Front elevation, again, the side that's more towards the south. The rear or east elevation, this would be what would be facing East Sunny Slope. Currently, the house fronts Sunny Slope. And then on the left side. And then this would be in context with the neighbors on either side. So the primary issue is, does this relieve practical difficulties that prevent reasonable use of complying with the reasonable use of the property and from complying with the ordinance? The proposed use is permitted in the R1 dwelling unit district and complies with all the zoning standards with the exception of the first floor elevation and front yard setback. The reason for the first floor elevation request is due to the proposed new home being oriented off of Hilltop and having to go up the hill with that first floor. So it is at a higher elevation. It would require that variance. The front yard setback will match the front yard setback of the neighbor to the south, but not the average of the adjacent neighboring homes is required by ordinance. The new home is not required to be reoriented towards Sunny Slope east and can maintain the required front yard setback if reoriented. Reasonable use of the property can be accomplished without the need for the two variances. The existing home, you could make a case that the existing home is reasonable use for the site. Are there circumstances that are unique to the property, not common to every similarly zoned property? The property is unique in the fact that there are two street frontages on the lot. The house that's adjacent to it, that is at 4800 Hilltop, that actually was a home that was facing East Sunny Slope. This was a new build, and it did receive a variance to be reoriented towards Hilltop. So this is a similar request as 4800 Hilltop. However, they did not require a front yard setback variance for that home. Will the variance alter the essential character of the neighborhood? Granting the variance may alter the character of the neighborhood given the reorientation of the front yard setback variance that's requested. Although there are other homes along Hilltop in the neighborhood, The proposed new home will be reoriented towards hilltop front sunny slope and will be 9.55 feet closer to the front lot line than the existing homes on either side or the subject property. The lot can accommodate a conforming home facing sunny slope east, or reoriented home could be designed for the site that could meet the front yard setback. So there are options that the Planning Commission they may, for approval and denial, they could approve the request for the 9.6-foot first floor height elevation and the 9.55-foot front yard setback variance for the new home's reorientation towards hilltop. A practical difficulty is caused by the elevation change of the lot, and the house needs to be raised to reorient the house. There are circumstances that are unique to the subject property. Those unique circumstances include the elevation change in the lot and having those two street frontages. The proposal would not alter the essential character necessarily of the neighborhood, given that the new home is a single-story walkout. The adjacent homes are two-story or multi-level homes, and the orientation around the cul-de-sac will not negatively impact the streetscape. The neighbor to the south is 6 inches closer to the front yard at 34 feet than what the subject home is, or subject property is proposing. Any approval should be subject to the following conditions: that the plans and survey date stamped October 27th, 2022, subject to the compliance with an engineer's memo that was included, dated November 10th, 2022, and subject to compliance with the new tree ordinance, with trees being replaced on the site per recommendation of the city forester. Denial for the request for the 1-foot first floor elevation variance and front yard setback variance for the new home can be based on the following findings: that the proposal does not meet the standards for a variance, given that due to the size of the lot, a new home could be constructed on the property that could meet the current required setbacks and zoning requirements. There is no practical difficulty preventing construction of the new home. A new home could be built and may not require a variance. A new home is not required to be reoriented towards hilltop. If granted, the first floor height variance for the new home, if it is reoriented towards hilltop, could be built without the need for the front yard setback variance. So staff cannot support the reorientation of the home to Hilltop Lane with the requested 9.6-foot first floor height variance and the 9.55-foot front yard setback variance from Hilltop Lane. Given the ability to comply with the code, a compliant house may be built on the property. Staff recommends denial of the variance application for a new house reorientation to Hilltop Lane for 4920 East Sunny Slope. And with that, I will answer any questions you may have.
Thank you so much. Who wants to start with questions? Commissioner Strauss.
Planner Ocker, just my impression, by changing the driveway from, one side of the lot to the other, they are eliminating a lot of driveway, correct? I mean, that's quite a change so the impervious surfaces on that lot would be considerably different from having that long winding driveway going down to.
So this is the current
Yeah.
home and driveway, so they do have a significant driveway that
and
goes
then
up to the house.
in from Hilltop, then they're just kind of coming right in. Okay.
And from Hilltop, it would be, the driveway would be
Right there.
coming in
Okay.
right there.
So with the proposed plan, what would be the new rear lot would be considerably different, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Please.
Do you by chance have an estimate on the square footage difference of the current house versus the proposed house?
I do not. That might be a question for the applicant. Perhaps they would know what the square footage of the proposed home is. I don't know perhaps they would know the square footage of the existing house as well.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Miranda.
So does staff feel that if they wanted to reorient the house, a house could be built that met the front yard setback, but would still be higher than the existing?
Yes, they would not be able to avoid that.
Okay. So in that case, staff feels that that would be acceptable if they met the front yard setback?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, I think that they should have the option. It's a through lot. They could access either street frontage. Engineering is, they're okay with that. Another house has done that. The one adjacent, if you're facing it, it'd be to the right. That house used to orient towards Sunny Slope and was moved up the hill. And it's just the fact that we have that ordinance that limits that 1 foot. It really doesn't address if you decide to move, if you have a large property and you move that new house in a different location, that certainly is going to affect where that new first floor will end up.
Okay. So a variance seems reasonable for this, but 2 variances seems like it's asking too much.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Alkire.
Thanks, Planner Acker. Just a couple of questions. First one's a bit rhetorical because I'm pretty sure I know the answer, but just for wanted to ask you about a couple things that were on the Better Together Edina feedback. The first had to do with height variance. My reading of some of the comments from residents was that the house would be too tall and that it needed a height variance. So can you just confirm that the house itself does not need a height variance? It's just the first floor elevation that has a variance.
That's correct. It is a 1-story home. It does not exceed the overall height requirements. The height is measured from average existing grade that's occurring along the new front building wall, so whatever the grade is at right now, which they do have to lift it somewhat in order to locate the house, but the overall height is being measured from that existing grade to the very top of the roof, and it's well within the requirements. I think there's a compliance table there. But it's not the height as measured from grade to the ridge. It all has to do with the first floor.
Right. Yeah, so on the compliance table, the house is actually 5 feet shorter than it could be, as far as I could tell, or as far as it would be allowed to be without a variance.
Correct.
The second question has to do with traffic. There was some feedback that adding the driveway to Hilltop would add traffic in an unsatisfactory way. Now, I don't think we did a traffic study for this, but just eyeballing it on the aerial maps, it doesn't appear to have any more or less traffic than a typical Edina residential cul-de-sac or street. Is there anything unusual about this street which would make one particularly concerned about adding another driveway to a cul-de-sac that already has 5?
I don't believe so.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Bennett.
So I guess just to tack on to Commissioner Elker's first question about the height. So that 34.6 doesn't account for the delta of that first floor change, right?
No.
So if you added 9 feet to that, I mean, effectively, what you could have built there, and if you didn't change the first floor, would be a few feet over what's allowed. So it's kind of like to support a variance, you kind of undo this other one that would occur.
Okay, if there are no more questions for staff, I will ask if we have any questions for the property owners. Was there a presentation or anything? Yes, please come and say whatever you'd like.
Project. I'm here as the owner's representative. Thank you for having me. I don't have a formal presentation put together at all, but I'm here to answer any questions I think really what we're looking for in this project is just the neighboring property having done a very similar thing that we're proposing here, raising the main floor, flipping the orientation, bringing the house up to meet hillside or a hilltop. It being the only lot on Hilltop that doesn't actually have frontage on Hilltop, and then just allowing us the ability to take the driveway at a more reasonable approach to the house, so we're not climbing up a hill to get to a driveway or coming down a hill into traffic as we're coming out of that driveway, and just making it a little easier from an approach standpoint and from an accessibility standpoint inside of that house. If we're coming up the driveway, the way it currently sets up, it's a tuck-under garage. The whole backside of that house is buried in into that hill. When you're looking out, then what would be the rear of the house, you'd be looking at the hill. The current house, as it sits right now, has a 4 to 6 foot retaining wall that creates this yard in the back. So I think it makes more sense for this lot to flip the orientation, bring the house up.
Thank you so much, Mr. Flint. What questions do we have? Commissioner Miranda.
Yeah, did you consider a plan where the house met the front setback?
We did. The challenge there is, again, just the topography of the lot. What you'd end up with by meeting that front setback is you'd either have garage doors that face the street and you're coming in which case you're coming kind of downhill from Hilltop, so that it's more difficult to direct water away and around the house at that orientation. So by doing the side load garage, we're able to kind of come down the hill but then come back up and direct water a little more around the house. It also allows for more parking off street. And then it also creates a better aesthetic to the streetscape. Really what we're looking at is, again, the house that's to the right of this property as you're on Hilltop. This house, as it currently sits, was already there, but when they applied for their variance, they didn't need a front yard setback because this house was oriented to sunny slope. They didn't need to take into account the fact that it's set back 50 or so feet from Hilltop. They only had to use the adjacent house, which was 34.2, Chris, you remember? Yeah. So when they put their house up, it was only using the neighboring setback. We're putting our house up using the neighboring setback, thinking the house to the left is set back so far. And if you even go, I don't think you have that up anymore, but if you look at that image of the neighboring homes, that was the best picture I could actually get of that property due to the heavy treed.
If we either want to pull it back up, otherwise we can, if you have the photo that you want to show, you could put it on the front center table and then we can...
Sure, use the camera.
Yeah.
I mean, that one or even the one, kind of the streetscape one. Yeah, this one, yep. So you can see the house to the left really isn't addressing the street. It's a very similar situation to the way, I mean, if you can kind of squint through the overlay here, there's not a house that you're really seeing on the street. The true nature of the ordinance is to create this unified streetscape. Oh, sorry. That's a good thing. Yeah. To create this unified streetscape across the neighborhood, right? So the one to the left being pushed back as far as it is, and then having all of the vegetation in the front really blocking the view of anyone from the street seeing it, we thought it was reasonable to match the setback to the right.
Thank you.
Please, go ahead. Commissioner Hugh.
Kind of just to repeat my question from before, I was wondering if you knew the square footage difference of the current house and the proposed house?
Yeah, the proposed house, we're at 5,500 square feet spread over 2 levels. The the house that's there currently has an 1,800 square foot footprint. So I would assume it's somewhere in that 35 to 3,800 square foot range.
Is the existing house then also just a two-story?
It is, yeah.
Okay.
Yep, there's the basement and then it's 2 stories. So yeah, it's probably maybe a little bit more than that.
Okay, thank you.
But the tuck under garage would take care of a lot of that.
Any other questions? Oh, sorry, Commissioner Bennett, go ahead.
So I guess that middle image where you just see trees.
Yes.
Now you see 2 stories of a house. Do you know what the height difference between the current top of the house and this one is?
I don't.
I mean, I just obviously see some neighbors' concerns where, effectively it would be taller than the height variances we talked about if you took it from where it originally is. And we've had similar scenarios when we've been by the creek and other things of we bring up the house a lot and then the house stays as tall as it was and it just kind of sticks out. I don't see this looking too out of place, but I would be curious to know if, the difference between the 2 tops is like 30 feet. It's quite a difference from a character that's already established on that block. Okay.
We could probably do the math on what the max would be if the current house is in compliance, right? Because we know the existing first floor elevation. And so it would have to be less than, I'm not going to do the math on the spot, I guess, but I'm asking you to. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So we will move to our public hearing. So just again, first we'll hear from residents who are in person, and then we will hear from those who would like to provide testimony remotely. So to participate remotely, call in now to 786-496-5601 and enter conference pin 4691667#. And then when you're ready to speak, be sure to press *1. Everyone is allowed up to 3 minutes to speak. Start with your full name and address, and either use the indicators on your podium, or if you're calling in, staff member Liz Olson will let you know if you've gone over 3 minutes. So I will first start. If there's anyone in the room to provide public testimony for this. And you can choose whichever side you'd like.
My name is Matt Graychuk. My wife Katie and my 3 children and I live at 4810 Hilltop Lane. First, let me start by expressing my gratitude to the Planning Commission for the service to our community, for upholding a reasonable set of rules, regulations, and code that maintains and positively affect our neighborhood and city, and also for the opportunity to provide feedback on proposals. I have previously submitted some of my comments via voicemail and the online form. Allow me to go on record opposing both requests for variances for the property in question. Rather than waste your time reiterating what I've already provided feedback for, allow me tonight, with a remaining time of 3 minutes, to refute some of the claims made by the applicant. The first one, the current home has a steep driveway. It does not. It has a gently sloping driveway that is long without a steep grade that adds an elevation 8 to 10 feet over the course of the driveway. It was brought up, I think, by Commissioner Strauss that eliminating the current driveway and going to a shorter one might reduce the impervious surfaces on the lot. I don't know what the hardscape cover is on the lot by the plans design, but I'm not certain that in exchange for the 3,000 square feet under roof, the pool, and the hardscape, that would be the case. Number 2, The house has a tuck-under garage. And to reach the main level, there are several steps before you reach an elevated stoop. So what? So does my house, and it's a great home. Number 3, the home to the west has an, quote, unusual placement. It distorts the average street side setback for this lot. Whether or not a home placement on a given lot that satisfies the setback criteria when constructed is unusual or not is very subjective. The reason the setback criteria exist, taking into account the adjacent homes, is to maintain the essential character of the neighborhood. Granting the setback variance will negatively impact the essential character of the neighborhood by placing a home too close to the street. And finally, in recent archives, at least available online, I'm sure you're all aware of the history of the Planning Commission, but a 10-foot first floor height variance is unprecedented, at least by what I could look up and record. The Planning Commission has on occasion approved, a 1-foot variance or maybe a fraction of it, usually for floodplain or basement issues. That seems very appropriate, but I couldn't find any history of a 10-foot first floor height variance. In fact, the Planning Commission recently denied a 5-foot first floor height variance request in White Oaks neighborhood. In summary, the topography of the lot at 4920 Sunny Slope Road does not support a reorientation of a home to Hilltop Lane under the current plans. I ask you kindly to veto, then deny the request for variances. Thank you for the opportunity to speak and be present tonight.
Thank you so much. Do we have anyone else in person tonight? Welcome.
Hi. Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name's Kirk Adalwin. I live at 4800 Hilltop Lane, which is the house to the right if you're facing the proposed home. I grew up in the Sunny Slope neighborhood. We built our house through a teardown process in 2013, which went through this exact same process. I think there is some reasonable concerns on my part and my family's in terms of character of the neighborhood. The Sunny Slope neighborhood is not like Country Club where you're looking into your neighbor's yard or looking into your neighbor's, like, into their house. The proposed house that is on this project, my daughter's room would look right into the bathroom within, if you look at the setback from side to side, would be very, very close. The Sunny Slope neighborhood has all kinds of different topography. It's very different from Country Club. There is a lot of existing mature trees that I'd like to talk about between the property lines. I think from that perspective, the character of the neighborhood would potentially be changed for a number of reasons. One of them is the trees that they're proposing to take down on the north side, the south side of their lot, the north side of our lot, would technically be considered heritage trees. I spoke to the arborist today, and if you look at the height, 4.5 feet off the ground, and the circumference of the trees, those are heritage trees as of January 1st. So that is not replacing a diameter of a tree that's 4 feet around with a 2-foot diameter tree, or a 2-inch, a very, very narrow tree in terms of replacing one tree for another. So that's a big concern of mine. The other thing is this entire property falls within the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District. I didn't see anything in the proposal that the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District had approved this. Probably another big concern I have is when we look at the coverage of the lot. They say in their proposal that 21% of the lot is covered by the house. I don't know if you can pull that up again in terms of the schematic. I think it'd be useful to look at. True that our house did do the exact same thing and flipped. Our house is on 0.6 of an acre. This house is on less than 0.5 of an acre, so it's a much smaller lot. And if you look at the proposal they have with the new house proposal, I'm not sure how they can say that that represents 21% of the surface coverage when you look at what they're proposing building. Maybe I'm misinterpreting what they're saying, but that doesn't seemed to make sense to me. So the other thing was when we built the house, the city of Edina required that all direct neighbors had to us approve for any type of new build or variance. That probably is not the case now, but we got letters from every direct neighbor when we built our house approving the entire process before the city gave us approval through the Planning Commission. So I thank you for your time and congratulations on getting to the City Council, and hopefully you will take my request into consideration.
Thank you so much. Do we have any others in person tonight for public testimony? All right, seeing none in person, I will look to see if we've had any dial in tonight.
We do have one caller on the line, but they have not indicated that they would like to speak. So I would like to remind them, if they would like to speak at this time, please hit *1 on your keypad. They have indicated that they would like to speak, and I just want to remind the caller to please state your name and your address for the record. Operator, please unmute our caller.
Yes, my name is Lori Groats, 5513 Park Place. I've been listening to the Planning Commission meeting tonight, and this piqued my interest a little bit when I was reading the agenda on the Planning Commission. I remember specifically back in 2013 when the house at 4800 Hilltop Lane requested to build their house up on Hilltop, and then previously it was down on Sunny Slope. At that time, the property owner had to request a conditional use permit in order to increase the first floor elevation. Rules have changed since then. Now they just allow a variance. Back then, for a conditional use permit, they needed to get permission from the surrounding neighbors. That's why it would be different now. To address the other neighbors' concern, there was a first floor height variance granted at 4800 Hilltop. They increased the first floor elevation by 11.5 feet, which meant that they got a 10.5 foot variance for the first floor elevation. I remember back then the staff strongly supported it, and the conditions on it at the time were that they couldn't have a driveway that would be coming from Sunny Slope, and then they were also required, there was a condition put on there, that they could not direct stormwater to the adjacent properties. The practical difficulty at the time that was addressed for the 4800 Hilltop was that the property was a through lot with slopes that rose from Sunny Slope to Hilltop Lane. To me, it sounds like the conditions are very similar, and so I'm kind of surprised that the staff was very supportive back in 2013 for the CUP, which was the property was originally 4924 Sunny Slope East, and now it's 4800 Hilltop Lane. So I'm very surprised that the staff strongly supported that, and the Planning Commission supported it by 100% unanimously. But at this time, the staff is not supporting it. So I just thought I would call in and give my comment on this. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there any other callers tonight?
There are none.
All right. Given that we've given at least a minute, I think we would be safe to close, but wonderful. All right, could I have a motion to close the public hearing, please?
Move to close the public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the public hearing portion has been closed. So now I will open it up to comments. Actually, can I interrupt with a question? Sorry. Director Teague, do you remember or were you a part of planning staff when the variance request for the 4,800 Hilltop was presented? And if so, do you remember any of those details that you could potentially share with us?
The Hilltop, the one right next door?
Yes, the one from 2013 that Lori Groats was referencing.
Yeah, my recollection was that was in the time when we couldn't process variances, so we had that different process with conditional use permit. But I think the difference between this one and the one back then is that 10-foot front yard setback variance. Kind of the size of this house in relationship to the lot. This is a little smaller lot than the one next door. So I think those two factors, size of the home and the front yard setback.
Thank you. Commissioner Miranda, did you have something?
Yeah, so in 2013, was there a height limitation ordinance?
Yes, yep. I believe we did make a height change in 2014. Don't recall the specifics, but we did have the 1 foot rule was in place.
It was, okay.
Yep. That was the conditional use permit.
Okay. And then I think it's relevant, but somebody asked about the 20% lot coverage. Can you explain that a little bit in terms of what we consider coverage?
Yeah, so we have a couple of, correct me if I'm wrong here, Chris. We have the building coverage requirement, and on a lot this size, I believe it's 25%. 25%. And then we also have the impervious surface requirement, which is at 50%. And this is code compliant in both regards.
Okay, thank you.
And could you just remind everyone too, it's the core of the building that counts for the building height, and then it would be kind of patio and driveway and everything else that would go into the impervious surface.
That's correct. Yep.
Thank you.
So this is a difficult one. I'm leaning towards agreeing with staff that this is multiple asks that are kind of big, and I think maybe it's just a little too ambitious. So.
Commissioner Strauss.
I would say I think my feeling is similar to Commissioner Miranda's, and I would have trouble disregarding staff's recommendation for not approving it. The two asks too many. I think that's probably true. And the other statement was that the staff's position that they believed a project was doable without, meeting, requiring these variances was doable. And I'm not sure that was explored or that I heard that it was. I thought the architect made some good points about redirecting water. I think that's probably a very, very valid point. And, but I guess I wasn't convinced. So thank you.
Commissioner Bennett?
Yeah, I'm split on this one. I feel like fundamentally what they're doing, and knowing that the neighbor did the same thing, makes sense. I mean, when you see that cul-de-sac, it kind of makes sense to flip the house around, then you get a walkout basement. Kind of makes sense. Just looks cohesive. At the same point, there's a number of asks, and when you do that and you change the first floor height that much, and then you still have a pretty tall building, that delta is greater than if you built the maximum at the current level. So if you build 40 feet right where it is now, this building's a few feet taller than that. So that's one on the character side of things. And feel like you can get creative, and I mean, I support what they're trying to do. So like, I probably would support this height variance, but find a way to get it farther from the street. It's kind of where I'm at.
Commissioner Alkire.
Yeah, I found this to be challenging as well. It's just based on, I mean, it's clearly over the past couple of decades, this small area of our city has been changing. The houses have been moving from pointing one direction to the other, and it's hard to not feel that the current owners should be able to reorient their house to Hilltop when it's been done so often. And apparently, the community seems to be still doing fine with those houses reoriented as they have been. In order to do that, you need the first floor height variance. Not necessarily unprecedented. It seems like something that we could, that I could support. The thing that is decisive for me, and Commissioner Strauss just mentioned it a minute ago, is the quote from the staff report where it says, "A reoriented home can be designed to conform to the required front yard setback from Hilltop Lane." So for me, that's where it switches from, a project that we can find a way to accommodate to one that just seems like it's needlessly large, and it's just one where it's a design choice rather than something that we need to agree to support the homeowner's desire to orient the house on Hilltop Lane. So it's a beautiful house. It looks like something that I surely want to live in. But I'd encourage the homeowner and the architect to find a way to live with that front yard setback. Thanks.
Commissioner Padilla?
Yeah, I would concur with my fellow commissioners. I also would take into account the hard work that the planners have done in recommending denial of this request. So I do I do take that into account, and I respect their opinion. And I agree with Commissioner Alkire that it's a beautiful house. I do not think it changes the character of the neighborhood, so I don't think that's an issue, nor do I think it's an issue that there'd be too much traffic in the cul-de-sac. But again, I think that as long as there is an option that falls within, without requiring a variance, that's what I would suggest.
Commissioner Smith?
Yeah, I would definitely torn here. I'm leaning towards approval on this one, only because I think I'm okay with the height. It makes sense to flip the house, given that all the traffic on Sunnyside, making it a little bit more difficult to get out. I think the hardscape and the land cover is okay. When I look at the homes opposite, I think it was covered here that the setbacks was similar, so it wasn't as far away from the street as this house is requesting, even though the adjacent homes might be a bit further back, but one of them is sitting way back, which would skew the average a little bit. So I think overall, I'm leaning yes, but if there was a design, I'll be more yes. If there was a design where the home could be maybe built on a smaller footprint, that would be ideal. But I think I don't have any major issues with what they're proposing. It makes sense to me, especially given that homes in the past had similar requests and got it approved. So I'm a little bit more positive, I think, than most folks here, but that's just some of my feedback.
Thank you. Any other commissioners tonight? Okay. Then I would entertain a motion.
I'd make a motion to deny the variance request based on findings as stated within the staff report for 4905 Sunny Slope Road.
4920. Is it 4920?
Oh, you're right.
Yes,
It says 4905 here. Is it 4920?
It is.
We'll take that as a friendly amendment, that it was 4920 Sunny Slope rather than 4905.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. So in this case, an aye would be to deny it. So all those in favor. Oh.
Question, so this is for both variances? Or
It's one motion.
both variances? That's what you're...
Yes, that was what I was moving.
All right. So all of those in favor of denying both variances, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
Can we do a roll vote? Just 'cause I want to make sure I got the count right.
Commissioner Padilla.
Nay.
Commissioner Miranda.
No, I'm sorry. I'm voting for denial, so aye. Is that right? Aye.
Commissioner Miranda.
Aye.
Commissioner Smith.
Nay.
Commissioner Elkhire.
Aye.
Commissioner Strauss.
Aye.
Commissioner Bennett.
Nay.
Commissioner Olson.
Nay.
Chair Agnew.
Aye. And so I believe that I didn't keep count. I think it was 4-3, right?
5-3.
5-3. I can't count. I apologize for that. So the variance has been denied. The variance requests for both have been denied tonight. So thank you so much. Anything else on that one? No. Okay. So next on the agenda is our chair and member comments.
Yeah.
Commissioner Bennett.
Congrats. All right,
Thank you.
speech.
Oh, okay. So this is my penultimate meeting. I do believe I get to come in December, so I'm not going to say goodbye yet. But yeah, I had so much fun on the Planning Commission that I thought I should do more similar. So yeah, super excited. But that does mean that I think next time we'll probably have an election or sometime soon. So keep an eye out for that on the agenda.
Are you the current?
Yeah, can we just chat? Can we decide tonight, or can we chat?
I don't want to put it on for vote tonight.
Okay.
Yeah, let's do it at another meeting.
Yeah.
Fine, Carrie.
Go ahead.
I just want to mention that we had a work session, the Planning Commission did, and at the December 6th City Council, there'll be a City Council Planning Commission work session to talk about the PUD public hearing process. We'll have a discussion on the current process and what it entails, and the Planning Commission may put forward a recommendation for some changes.
Thank you. Any other
Can I ask a question about that? Sorry, because we kind of were pressed for time, and a question occurred to me after we were done. So is the site plan public hearing question a separate question? Because don't we have public hearings for site plans as well? And there was a question whether we could change that. So is that a separate conversation?
I think it's all part of the same discussion.
Okay.
So site plans would be one public hearing as well.
Okay. Thanks.
All right, seeing no other comments, I'm going to pass it over to Carrie.
Just a quick update on the last city council meeting. They held a public hearing for the McCully Trail subdivision that was on the Planning Commission agenda at the last meeting, just the public hearing, so they haven't taken action. That'll take place on December 6th. That's the same for the First Bank building. the restaurant, Keys Restaurant site update. Because the city council was short one member, the applicant requested another continuance. So that public hearing is scheduled for December 6th. So I believe that will take place. And then just, if you would please put on your calendars the December 6th work session. We had excellent discussion this evening and hope to continue that with the city council. That's it for me. 5:30 up in the community room.
Does the city council meet after that session? Do they-
Yes.
That's their meeting, right?
Yep.
Okay, but we're just 5:30 to...
Correct.
Is that the only agenda topic?
I believe it is. I'll verify that and let everybody know.
All right. I will entertain a motion to adjourn then.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, meeting's adjourned. Thanks, everyone.